I am required to inform you that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. Welcome to those members of the public in the public gallery and those watching from home. Please afford me a few minutes to cover a number of housekeeping formalities. If any member of the public or press would like to record the proceedings themselves, please ensure this is done from the public gallery without interfering with the business of today's meeting. If the fire alarm sounds, can those sitting in the public gallery exit through the doors behind them, and those sitting in the council chamber, please leave the room by the doors behind me and make your way to the forecourt at the front of the town hall. Staff will assist with this. Please may I ask members, officers, and members of the public to limit disturbances wherever possible. Please ensure mobile phones and other electronic devices are on silent during the meeting. Any member who wishes to speak on any of the agenda items should use the microphones available. This is to ensure that everyone in the chamber can be heard. Members, you will note that each desk is equipped with an individual microphone. Members must switch on their microphones using the long mic button by pressing speak. Ensure they are close to the microphone when speaking and that they speak directly into it. Members should please mute their microphones to reduce feedback and background noise when they are not speaking. Can I also take this opportunity to remind members that the Code of Conduct applies to this meeting, and we should always demonstrate respectful, courteous behaviour to one another. Members are also reminded that full council today will only deal with the business that is set out on the summons as per council procedure rules. Members should indicate that they wish to speak by physically raising their hand and being invited to speak. All other councillors must remain silent while a member is speaking. Voting will be managed by the Monitoring Officer and Strategy and Democracy Services Officers taking the minutes. If any item does not appear contentious, members will be asked whether any member disagrees or wishes to abstain. In the situation where this or any dissenting voice, a vote will be taken. If an item requires a vote, the monitoring officer will either ask for a show of hands or will read out the names of each member in alphabetical order and ask them how they wish to vote. We will record the outcome of any voting and announce it at this evening's meeting. I have received apologies from the following councillors: Councillor Hetherington, Milburn, Huntley, Potts and McCabe. Are there any other apologies?
Madam Mayor, from Councillor Duncan and Councillor Strike.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councillor McHugh.
Thank you. The first item on the agenda this evening is declarations of interest. Does any member wish to make any declarations before we move on to the next item of business? Councillor Walsh. Right, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
I'd like to declare an interest as I'm chair of the Adult and Children's Safeguarding on item 4 on the agenda. Also, I'm of Governor at Lord Blyton School for item 4 as well. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Councillor Taylor. Is there anyone else? Sorry. Councillor Lamont, sorry.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to declare an interest in item 4.
I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
I'd like to declare
An interest in item 4. I'm Vice Chair for Children and Adult Safeguarding.
Thank you for that. Colleagues are reminded that if you have a disclosable pecuniary interest in any item which prevents you from participating in the debate and any vote, you will need to leave the chamber during that item. Once the item has been considered, an officer will come to get you to bring you back into the meeting. Item 2 on this evening's agenda. The next item is the business of the minutes of the annual meeting of council held on the 17th of May 2022. Are they accepted as a correct record? Yes, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. At the last full council meeting, you were voting for a second year, is that correct? Or appointed for a second year?
Yes,
Yeah.
Councillor Robertson.
At page 154 of the Constitution, it states relating to extraordinary meetings, any 5 elected members of the council can ask the mayor to call an extraordinary meeting for the council at any time if they have signed a requisition presented to the mayor. If the mayor refuses to call a meeting or does not call one within 7 days of receiving the request, then any 5 elected members of the council can call an extraordinary meeting by leaving their request with the office of the chief executive. Now, as you hopefully are aware, 5 elected members, including myself, sent you that request last week.
Can I just say,
Can I finish, please?
No, just a minute, Councillor Robertson.
Okay.
That is not on the agenda this evening and it won't be discussed.
I know it's not on the agenda, but I'm saying you were elected, and I'm just sort of reminding you what it says in the Constitution, your duty as a mayor, if you don't mind.
Councillor Robertson.
Can I say it, not?
No, Councillor Robertson,
No.
I'm not going to take it.
You cannot be appointed to the position if you won't do the role, it says in the Constitution.
Councillor Robertson, I can tell
No.
you, I do this role
Well,
professionally.
you didn't even acknowledge the request.
Councillor Robertson, you have been replied to by legal services on my
It
behalf.
was addressed to the mayor.
Councillor Robertson, can I just remind you, anything that I do in this council, I take legal advice on. I don't do it off
I
my own
understand, I
back.
respect that.
So I have if you let me finish,
Mhm.
I have taken legal advice.
Mhm.
You have been given a response by the legal department on my behalf.
That's correct. I've been given the reply of the legal department. The Constitution says the mayor. You haven't even had the courtesy to respond to it or acknowledge it. It's okay, thank you.
Councillor Robertson, that is totally disrespectful. I'm sorry, Councillor Robertson, please sit down.
You didn't acknowledge it.
Councillor Robertson, please sit down.
Thank you.
Just for the benefit of the members in the public gallery and the members watching from home, Councillor Robertson was given a response on my behalf by legal services, which is my right to do so as mayor. Thank you. We now move on to the next item of the
Can I
agenda.
respond to that comment?
No, I'm sorry, you
I
can't,
thought-
Councillor Robertson.
Thought not. We're in South Tyneside, UK, you know, we're not in Russia. You know that?
Councillor Robertson, I will issue with one warning. If you continue to behave in this manner, you will be asked to leave the meeting.
Thank you.
Item 3, as the Mayor's announcements. I have 2 announcements I'd like to make this evening. Yesterday in South Tyneside, we had the Rifles and Bugles sounding the retreat in South Marine Park. It was a huge honour for the borough, and today I've received a letter from the High Sheriff asking me to pass on his sincere thanks to South Tyneside Council staff and all that were involved and enabling that event to take place. Also, I'd like to remind members, starting on Saturday is our summer festival. That commences with our summer festival parade. That commences with our summer festival parade, which takes place from 1 p.m. and starts at the town hall here in South Shields, goes down Fowler Street and along Ocean Road and ends up in Ben's Park. I would hope all members would attend. Thank you. Item 4 on this evening's agenda. The next item of business is to consider an annual report of the Director of Public Health, entitled A Time Like No Other. I will ask Councillor Berkeley to formally move the report. Councillor Berkeley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Fellow elected members, this evening I am pleased to present the annual report of the Director of Public Health. The DPH is a statutory chief officer of their authority and the principal advisor on all health matters to elected members and officers, with a leadership role spanning all three domains of public health: health improvement, health protection, and health and care public health. Under the Health and Social Care Act 2012, DPHs have a duty to write an annual report on the health and well-being of the local population, and the local authority has a duty to publish it. DPH reports are a retrospective. We look back at the challenges of the last year. For the 2021-2022 report, Tom has chosen to focus in on our experiences and learning from the COVID-19 pandemic. This builds on his previous reports, looking at the role of the wider determinants of health and giving every child the best start in life. These recommendations still stand and are influencing policy and practice today. The report focuses on the pandemic because it has been the single greatest acute public health crisis in living memory, and one of the biggest societal and economic challenges we have experienced in peacetime Britain. This pandemic has taught us a lot in terms of how we were able to respond as a community and as a system of health, care, and public service organisations. The report captures important stories and reflections on how we did things and the types of responses we put in place. It is important that we write these things down and capture them for future generations. You will see in the report there are powerful stories and poems from people in our communities, and we need to capture and remember these words. You will also see from the report the unequal impact that the pandemic has had. Communities with the greatest level of social disadvantage felt the greatest impact of the pandemic, both direct in terms of rates of infection, higher burdens of disease, and higher rates of death. Our more deprived populations were more likely to contract the virus, 3 times more likely to be hospitalized, and nearly twice as likely to die with the virus. And indirectly, in terms of the impact of lost education, issues such as childhood obesity, and wider issues such as domestic abuse. Children living in the most deprived areas in England are more than twice as likely to be living with obesity compared to those living in the least deprived areas. The pandemic mirrored what we already know. If you are in a poorer household, the odds are you have a shorter life and spend more time in poor health. Within the report, there are several recommendations, including to continue to monitor the long-term and indirect impact of COVID-19, to inform recovery plans and long-term objectives of the health and well-being strategy, as well as ensuring that we explicitly reference and demonstrate how we will target and address inequalities in our economic, regeneration and service recovery plans. However, trying to address inequalities through service solutions or remedial actions will not be enough on their own. We demonstrated this throughout the pandemic. We must address inequality at the root of the issue through every decision and action we take as a local system, while also advocating for change in regional and national policy, another key recommendation from the report. The report contains several reflections into a set of learning points and further recommendations on page 7 of the report. Borough Council are asked to endorse these recommendations and publish the report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Ellison. Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak on the report? Councillor Francis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try and be brief. Obviously, thank you to Councillor Barclay for speaking on this, and a huge thank you to the team of staff that have done all the work, not only on the report, but obviously all the work through the last couple of years, tackling an unprecedented global pandemic. And I think it's worth saying there should also be a huge note of thanks to all that have been involved in any way in the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, whether that's volunteers and community champions, whether it's our health and care workers or other key workers who've kept South Tyneside and in fact the country going through this crisis. And obviously those people don't just need our thanks, they need our ongoing support over paying conditions too. I think this report and what we've seen in the last 2 years shows what can be achieved when a group of people, a community pulls together to tackle a crisis. But obviously, as said, it also highlights some of those health inequalities. COVID-19 didn't create those inequalities, but it kind of shone a light on them, and in some cases sort of magnified those issues. Yeah, it hasn't been mentioned explicitly in the speech there, but I know Tom's got a great example of two sort of hypothetical children growing up in the borough, in different parts of the borough. And we know that if you grow up in Simonside and Recondike versus Cleveland East Bolden, you've got average statistically 12 years less life expectancy. And, you know, I think we should all be rightly horrified at that kind of postcode lottery and doing everything we can to address that. Obviously, we want every child, as you say, to have the best start in life. But I know that we've got an excellent and committed and dedicated team of staff working on this. And I'm sure, you know, we have full confidence in them to do their best to tackle those inequalities. I'm sure they have our full support and backing with that. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Francis. Is the report and recommendations outlined in paragraphs 7 to 18 of the report agreed? Thank you, colleagues. We now move on to item 5 of this evening's agenda. This is to consider a report of the Director of Regeneration and Environment on the Carr Ellison Park charitable issues. I will ask Councillor Gibson to formally move the report. Councillor Gibson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. The Council is the freeholder of Carr Ellison Park, which has been upheld as a trust forever as a public park for recreational use. When making any decisions about the park, the Council must ensure it complies with the Charity Commission and the Charity Act, acting in the best interests of all charities. The former park, Keeper's Lodge, has been unused since 2015. The Council has been approached by a beekeeper who wants to invest in the building to establish a bee farm. There are 3 conditions the Council must consider as part of this transaction. which are set out in paragraph 11. As per report, the council should be assured that conditions are met. Therefore, I recommend council to note the charitable status of Carl Ellison Park, agree the lease of the Park Lodge and the other land in close proximity, note the administrative arrangements for the charity goes forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Are there any questions or does any member wish to speak to the report? Yes, Councillor Flynn.
Yeah, Chair, I welcome the report. The house has stood empty some 8 years, and the Hebburn South Councillors were called in 6 years ago to discuss the future, but we've been tied by legal issues and contractual issues in between. I'm only pleased that the gentleman's still around because he's been involved for some 3 years now. So this is progress.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Do council agree to note the charitable status of Carl Ellison Park, Hebburn, and implications arising from the status as outlined in the report? Do council agree to the proposed disposal of lease of park and lodge and land in the proximity to it for a bee farm on the terms outlined in the report? Do council note the administrative arrangements for the charity? Do council agree to what I have just read? Thank you, colleagues. Item 6 on this evening's agenda is to consider a report of the Director of Regeneration and Environment on Carl Ellison Park, regularising the charitable trust and replacement land. I will ask Councillor Gibson to formally move the report. Councillor Gibson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Carl Ellison Park is adjacent to Hebburn Comprehensive School. When the school was first built, they approached some of the educational land for educational purposes. This is a breach of the charitable trust, given that the land was longer used for purpose of recreational and public use. As in the land, the land has been identified as a replacement for the charitable land. The council has spoken to the Charity Commission, who have confirmed the purpose of the land is suitable replacement. The land will be given to the charity at nil cost, given the historic land was taken at nil consideration. As such, new declaration of trust must be established, which is to be on the same terms as the historic charitable land. I therefore recommend to council to note the historic issue, to establish a new charitable trust affecting the land highlighted in Appendix 1, authorise the head of legal services to enter into a deed of trust as required to finalise this arrangement. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Is that seconded?
Seconded, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Are there any questions or does any member wish to speak to the report? Do council note the historic issues affecting the charity of Carl Ellison Park, Hebburn? Do council agree to the regularise the historic breach of charitable trust affecting the charity by establishing a new charitable trust affecting land to the north of Mountbatten Avenue on the same terms as the existing? Do council authorise to enter into the deed of trust to give effect to these resolutions? Can I ask council, do they agree to that? Thank you, colleagues. We now move on to item 7 on this evening's agenda, to consider a report of the Director of Governance and Corporate Affairs on the continued appointment of the independent chair of the Standards Committee. I will ask Councillor Dixon to formally move the report. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleagues, this report seeks to agree the continued appointment of the Council's independent chair of the Standards Committee. I would ask colleagues to agree the recommendation that Professor Graham Wright, appoint as independent chair of the Standards Committee, be extended for a further 4-year term, with the expiring date being at the annual council in May 2026. And this is to offer stability and consistency in the role, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Is that seconded? Thank you, Councillor Peacock.
Madam Mayor, can I speak, please?
Just 1 second. Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak to the report? Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Within the papers, it's attached national picture for standards update report. Can we speak about that now, please?
Yes.
Yeah. At paragraph 31, could I ask the head of legal to give an explanation of that for members and the public watching, exactly what that means in paragraph 31, please?
Certainly, Councillor Robertson. I will ask legal services to do that
you.
now for you. 31. I'm sorry, Councillor Robertson, is that in the report?
It's attached to the papers, Madam Mayor, national picture standards update report.
But it's not in the agenda for this evening's meeting, I'm being
Well, it's a
advised.
document that's it's been slotted in for this evening's meeting. That's what I'm saying to you. I haven't just brought it with us.
Right, so do all members have a copy of this document that Councillor Roberts is talking about?
Well-
Robertson, sorry.
This was printed off the council's page last night for this meeting, alongside the standards decision for the chair. I haven't just created it.
No, nobody's questioning that you have created it, Councillor Robertson, but no member has a copy of this.
Yeah, I understand. If it helps, I can read the paragraph out. It's not big,
But it isn't on this evening's agenda, Councillor
well,
Robertson.
it's on the council's website for this evening. That's what I can understand.
It isn't.
Right. See, my papers never come, Lady Mayor, right? So I chased them up, and because they weren't here and I needed to do work on them, I printed off what I needed, give or take.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Then the papers arrived this afternoon, and these are part of the section about voting for the chair of the Standards Committee, which I was looking for an explanation off the head of legal about paragraph 31.
Right, but no other member, Councillor Robertson, has a copy of that document that you've got in your hand. It isn't on this evening's agenda. What we are asking for this evening is to endorse that Mr. Graham Wright contract is carried on for the next 4 years. Without members having that documentation in front of them, we can't discuss it, and it is not on the agenda. It was on the endorsement. If you have a query outside of this meeting, I'm sure that legal services will be able to answer you.
I get exactly what you've just explained there, I really do. And the thing is, when I went on the council's website and looked for tonight's papers, that's where I've got it from. So I can understand why they've issued to members all of these documents, but on the website, this document is there, and it's an important document, very important.
I'm really sorry, Councillor Robinson, I'm not aware of that. Can anybody answer me as to why it would be publicised on the website and that our elected members don't have a copy of it with the paperwork?
4th of July, 2022. No, Mr. Rum, you'll be aware of it. It's a crucial.
Right, it
document.
isn't, right, Councillor Robertson, it's just been explained to me. That document is from the 4th of July. If you look at the date at the top left-hand corner,
Mhm.
that's from Monday. That is from a meeting on Monday.
Mhm.
It would not be included in this evening's council papers.
Yep.
Does
You
that
know,
explain it to
I get
you?
your point now.
So
I'll leave it at-
any
I will leave it at
questions?
that, but I got off the council's website for this
Yeah,
meeting.
I appreciate what
Thank
you're
you.
saying,
Yeah.
but any questions that you have regarding to the documentation that you have in your hand, please contact legal services
Okay.
and they will be able to assist you.
Right, thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome. Are there any further questions, or does any other member wish to speak? Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so I mean, I guess first of all, I should give thanks to Professor Wright for the work he's done over the last few years. It's obviously a challenging but important role, and it probably feels like a thankless task some of the time. So I think it's only right to give our thanks to him for his work. And I've no hesitation in supporting the recommendation that he serves another term if he's enough of a glutton for punishment that he wants to do that. I know that some people are probably cynical about essentially councillors policing councillors, which is what happens with the Standards Committee. And so I think having lay members, and in particularly an independent chair, is an excellent way of making sure that we bring a non-political and impartial perspective to the committee. The only thing that I would say is, because there are other lay members, people that aren't elected councillors that serve on that committee, and I just wonder if perhaps Constitution Committee might look at the possibility of having a lay member serve as a vice chair. So if the chair, who's a lay member, was indisposed for any reason, you've still got that same, external impartial voice going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Francis. We will take that to Constitution Committee for you, Councillor Francis. Okay.
Can I speak, Lady Mayor, please?
Yes, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. Yeah, I repeat most of what David's just said there. It's a thankless task, what he does. Probably his best customer so far. But down the lines of, there's only one comment I would make, and that is about the compliance with section 28.8C of the Localism Act. It needs to be complied with. I know we've appointed an independent person now, but the council didn't have one for 4 years. And the borrowed one in, which is totally, not in compliance with the Act. If this person that we've got, there should be two, other councils have got two independent people in case there's a conflict of interest or there's an illness. We've appointed one, and we need to appoint another one for that reason.
So
and
therefore,
any hearings with an outside independent person doesn't comply with section 28.8 of the Localism Act. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councillor Robertson, and that's what Councillor Francis has just proposed, that we have a vice chair, so therefore there is two independent people.
With respect, Madam Mayor, he's on about the independent chair, right? Now, that's the title of the man, Graham Wright, but the independent person is a separate entity.
I was aware that we had an independent person sits on the Constitution Committee.
Yeah, but under the
Sorry, on
Localism Act,
standards.
you must have an independent person, and it lays down the criteria. You must advertise for the person, they must apply for the role, and the majority of the full council must approve them, otherwise they're not legal. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome, Councillor Robertson. I'm going to ask Councillor Dixon to reply to that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to give Councillor Robertson some reassurance, a couple of months ago at a previous council meeting, we did bring that report through, and it was ratified at full council that there is an independent person now sits on the Standards Committee, Councillor Robertson, which I'm sure you'll be aware.
Can I respond to Leader, please?
Certainly, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you. I take your point, Leader, but the legislation is the legislation, and this council since 2017 did not have an independent person in place right through to 2021. Through my two hearings was an outside person brought in. Please have a look at the section 28. It's unequivocal. You must advertise for them, they must apply for it, and the majority of the full council must approve them. The people that heard my case weren't meeting the criteria, and the people that's going to hear Mr. Malcolm's next week aren't meeting the criteria.
I'm sorry, Councillor Robertson.
It's just the truth,
Right.
Madam Mayor.
It's been, yes, you've made your point, Councillor Robertson. It's been explained to you by the leader, and we shall just leave it there. Do Council agree to the extension of Professor Graham Wright's appointment of independent chair of the Standards Committee for a further 4-year term, expiring on the date of the annual meeting of the Council in May 2026. Do members agree to that? Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8 on this evening's agenda, to consider a report of the Director of Governance and Corporate Affairs to amend the membership of council committees. I'm going to ask Councillor Dixon to formally move the report. Councillor Dixon.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Colleague, this report seeks to address a small change required to the membership of the Pensions Committee as set out in the report at paragraph 4. I would ask colleagues to agree the recommendation that the nomination by the Labour Group to the Pensions Committee be altered as set out in the report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Are there any questions, or does any member wish to speak to the report? Thank you. That is agreed. Thank you. We now move on to item 9, to consider any questions received under Procedure Rule 8. No questions have been received under this rule. The next item of business is item 10 on this evening's agenda, is to deal with petitions received under Council Procedure Rule 9. No petitions have been received under this rule. May I also advise that no petitions were submitted. Sorry, that's not worded right. May I also advise that as no petitions were submitted to our January meeting of the Borough Council, and therefore there are no updates, actions to report back today. We now move on to item 11 on this evening's agenda. The next business is to receive motions under Procedure Rule 10. 3 motions are to be considered under this rule today. I will explain the procedure for the motions. I will ask the proposer of each motion to move the motion, and he or she may speak for up to 5 minutes. I will then ask whether the motion is seconded. The seconder may speak up to 3 minutes or reserve the right to speak later in the debate. The motion will then be open to debate by members who may each speak up to 3 minutes and may move amendments. Motion 1 has been submitted by Councillors Robertson, Roberts, Kennedy, Milburn and Forster. Councillor Robertson, please present the motion to full council.
Thank you, Lady Mayor. Could I do a point of information first, please?
Certainly.
I haven't done the register this evening.
It's been passed round, Councillor.
Okay. Right, so motion 1.
Can I just say, Councillor, if you have not signed it, you do need to do
Well, it
so.
wasn't given to me. I've been
So
since
we
before it
know that
started.
you have been here.
No problem. That's where it can fail, you know. Thank you. So this motion, for several years, the Borough Council has been recording and posting on YouTube videos of the full council so the public can see what's been discussed and decided. Over these several years, the cost of that, contractors, whatever it may be that comes in to do the video, the finance officer has informed me that it's £2,000 per meeting. Now, if you look over several years, you're looking at £60,000 minimum for these videos to be done as it's getting done right now. Now, the equipment used for that, you know, couldn't be cost more than £10,000 on a tripod, a video, etc. And I'm not belittling the gentleman that's doing it, but this motion is to ask for more meetings to be videoed, either live or just recorded on the council's website, because a lot of the public can't get to the meetings, you know, because of childminding, working full time, or, you know, working whatever shifts. And the meetings such as Standards Committee, Audit Committee, Scrutiny Committee, they're all interesting things that the public can really look at the minutes, you know. And when we talk about cost effective, if the council was to buy the equipment and train the relevant staff to do it, you know, we're not talking about every meeting, and even alternate the meetings that would be of proper interest to the general public. So I'd like to ask full council to back that. When the leader of the council was appointed, she promised on that appointment that she would ensure greater transparency and accountability. And this motion here is a perfect example, you know, for the public to be able to see an audit committee meeting. The CAF meetings would be good for the public, but an audit committee meeting, or Mr. Malcolm in action at the overview and scrutiny committee, they're all interesting meetings that the public would like to see. Do you know? So this openness and transparency, it's no good when it's behind these four walls, and the public, when they go on the council's minutes and it'll say exempt information and this, that and other. Yeah. So I'd like the full council to back the idea of screening more meetings, or if not live, so that people can see them on the council's website, please. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Is the motion seconded? Certainly, Councillor Roberts. The motion is now open to debate by members. Do any members wish to ask questions or speak or move an amendment to the motion? Councillor Best.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I remain seated for the purposes of the microphone. I really welcome the opportunity to respond to this motion and the subsequent motion, incidentally, to highlight the work that is actually already underway to improve and look at what we already do in terms of democratic engagement in the borough. Members will recall that last month I was appointed as the champion for democracy in South Tyneside, and that's a role that I very much welcome, and I take that very seriously. To that end, and to get off to as quick a start as possible, I did meet with relevant officers, some of whom are in this room this evening, on the 9th of June, and I took to the officers a really comprehensive list of suggestions, observations and ideas that we could look at in terms of what we can potentially do. And it isn't just about videoing the meetings, which is what this particular motion is about, but it is very, very wide ranging, and it includes methods to both highlight the existing opportunities, of which there are many, to engage in democracy in South Tyneside, but also to look at the public engagement around council committee meetings and what exists already and what potential there is. The officers then took away the report and have been looking at the practicalities, the logistics, the viability of the proposals, the resource implications in very great detail, as they are obviously the people who would need to deliver such changes, such improvements in the first instance. So to look at it very much from a practical point of view. And I do look forward to hearing their findings so that we can look at what happens next with that forward plan. I'm working very closely with Councillor Bell, the lead member for Governance, Finance and Corporate Services, and my proposals did include mechanisms by which both the public and elected members can engage in the development of such a programme of improvements. And one of those very important methods is currently something that we have, which is the scrutiny process. That, in the model of governance that we have in South Tyneside, is one of the important ways that we can shape these types of policies, ask the public their opinions, ask elected members their opinions. So I propose to bring that type of work and the detail of what that entails to those forums, and perhaps to the CAFs, and also, of course, to the Constitution Committee. In terms of the approach, it fully complements our council approach that we've just adopted here in South Tyneside. It's a change programme that we all want to engage in, and I think we've got off to a great start with that. So it very much took that into consideration and very much complements it. And it also builds upon the well-documented success and the leadership that we've shown in previous years towards transparency, openness and public engagement proactively in democracy. And that's all well documented if anyone wants to look at that. So we've done a lot of this work previously, and it's a case of rebuilding that and building upon what we already have achieved. So I report this information to the council today to indicate that this motion and the subsequent motion actually concerns a lot of work that is already well underway with officers supporting it wholeheartedly. And just as a point of information, for the purposes of the public, if, for example, a video was made of a meeting where there was an exempt report, which is what Councillor Robertson's just referred to, the videoing of the meeting wouldn't make any difference to the exemption. You know, it's exempt for a reason, and the public would still need to be excluded, and potentially the press as well. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Best. Does any other member wish to speak or move an amendment? Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move or propose an amendment. I know that this amendment's been circulated to members earlier today, and obviously there's paper copies as well. And it's got some text struck through, which is I'm proposing to remove, and some additional text which I'm proposing to insert is highlighted in blue text. Rather than read the whole thing, what I'd like to do, if that's possible, is just read through the amended version of the resolutions, if that's okay. So the amended version would read as follows. This council resolves to set up a cross-party working group or ask the Constitution Committee to investigate options for live streaming or recording and publishing all committee meetings other than those excluded for legal reasons. The resulting report, including indicative cost estimates and potential timelines for implementation, should be presented to the May 2023 annual Borough Council meeting for a decision. And it goes on to say, the council resolves to ask the leader and chief executive of the council to write to the Secretary of State for Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, calling on the government to introduce legislation allowing local authorities the flexibility to offer virtual and remote meetings where these are deemed appropriate. And so that's the text that I'm proposing. I'd like to start with something I would hope that we can all agree on, which is that local engagement in democracy is an inherently positive thing that we should all be trying to encourage. And I'm reminded of the Abraham Lincoln quote that democracy is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I agree with the intention of the original motion, which is to try and boost those levels of public engagement. We've seen the experience through the pandemic, because meetings moved online for a period of time, that gave people an easy window into the workings of local government, and people were able to easily access those meetings that were live streamed, that had been held on Zoom. And some members of the public have expressed disappointment to me that they still can't access meetings in the same way. The reasons for the amendment, partly it's the time frame. I've extended the time frame of the original motion just to allow adequate time for the relevant background work to be done, so that we can all make an informed decision when this comes back to full council potentially. I've mentioned about cost, because obviously while online there was sort of little to no cost, in person, as we've heard, cost could be significant, and investing in that might mean cutting spending elsewhere. So it would have to be a carefully thought out decision. And thirdly, I've included the call on government to reinstate hybrid or remote meetings, not just for public engagement, but that would also reduce transport emissions and make it easier for elected members and the public to access meetings around other commitments. So in closing, I would say the motion as amended isn't committing us to actually taking this step. It's simply asking that some work's done in order for us to make an informed decision on what we think is the best way forward to hopefully improve public engagement and public scrutiny of the work we all do on the public's behalf.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. Councillor Bell, did you wish to speak?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, it's just another amendment, and hopefully to try and simplify what we're all trying to do tonight. Councillor Robertson's quite right. For several years, meetings of the Borough Council have been recorded and posted on YouTube. The regulations expired on the 6th of May 2021 and were not capable of being extended. However, full council meetings continue to be live streamed and recorded for future viewing, as we all know. While we recognise that it is not appropriate for some meetings to be live streamed or recorded, such as HR, disciplinary meetings or contracts panel, this council does recognise that the benefit of increased public engagement, better understanding of how the council works and improved transparency can only be beneficial to the council's reputation and its credibility. Therefore, this council resolves to refer this motion to the Constitution Committee, which is a cross-party committee, to fully investigate the options available for live streaming or recording and publishing all committee meetings where possible, and to fully consider all financial, legal, location and health and safety implications. the committee to report back with all findings when those investigations are fully completed. And I know that doing that the Constitution Committee will take into consideration all that has been spoken about here tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. If we go back to the first amendment, sorry, which I should have taken straight away. It was my mistake. I do apologise, Councillor Francis. No, I'm sorry, you can't at the moment until we've dealt with the amendments, and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Robertson, because you were the proposer. We need a seconder for Councillor Francis' proposal. Councillor Guy, you've seconded it. Thank you so much. We need a vote. Would you like to speak? Right, thank you. Does any other member wish to speak on the First Amendment? You're confused.
Thank you. I'm all over here with my notes, but we're speaking on the First Amendment.
We're speaking on the First Amendment
Okay,
that
I'll
Councillor
try to
Francis
work
put to
around
full
that
council.
position. So on the original motion, I was going to say public accessibility, participation, engagement in our local authority activities just isn't healthy. It's clearly reflected in many areas: public consultation, public attendance at council meetings, and a dismal turnout for local elections. We need to do something. I agree with the constructive amendment from Councillor Francis also. On Councillor Bell's comments, should I wait for the amendment
to go on to that amendment. That's the mistake I made, Councillor Thompson.
So I support the constructive amendment from Councillor Francis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Does there any other member wish to speak on the proposed First Amendment to the motion? Thank you, Councillor Flynn.
Yeah, Chair, I'm no stranger to rules because I was on the rules revision of my union for 20 years. But I've sat here tonight totally confused until Councillor Francis actually spoke, because I've got in front of me Amendment 2 to Motion 1, but I haven't got Amendment 1 to I haven't got amendment to Resolution 1. So I think I understand now where Councillor Francis is coming from, other than to say I totally disagree. But I think that the way the amendment's been done isn't satisfactory. We cannot just scratch lines out, stick words in. It's got to be done properly. And the normal terminology is you delete after paragraph 1 or you delete after paragraph 3, you insert, you add. You don't just scribble out.
Thank you, Councillor Flynn. Could, in a moment, does the seconder now want to speak? Because you reserved your right to speak, Councillor Guy. Would you now like to speak?
Yeah,
On motion 1?
I'm quite confused, I'm not going to lie. I think what Councillor Flynn has just said has also went up against his own party's motion. Yeah, I think we need to improve public engagement massively. I think this amendment, what it's doing is it's setting out the Constitution Committee to look at it properly and then come back, and then we can decide. This isn't a knee-jerk reaction to a single motion. This is merely just a fact-finding mission. And all I can ask is people support it.
Thank you, Councillor Guy. Councillor Francis, would you like to respond to that as the proposer of the first motion?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so the amendment has been run past council officers to make sure that it's, kosher and done in the right sort of way, and I didn't get any feedback to suggest that it wasn't clear. As Councillor Guy points out, this is Amendment 2. You'll see text struck through and other text inserted, and I asked, for the sake of brevity, the Mayor if it was okay to simply read the amended resolutions. If you want, I can go back and take the time to say where I'm inserting and taking out, but I think it's very clear looking at the text. What's coming out is crossed out. What's being added in is in a different colour. And that's exactly the same way that we've seen amendments presented at full council ever since I've been an elected member here. And it's exactly the same as what's happening in the
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I've made this
amendments.
point many a time. I'm not arguing about who advised you to put it together. I'm simply saying it's not correct.
Councillor Flynn, please, when another member is speaking, have the courtesy to hear him out, and then we'll allow you to speak again. Thank you. Carry on, Councillor Francis.
Yes, I'm just saying that it's also the way that the other amendments that are presented by the group, which you are a member of, it's how they've been presented here tonight as well. So it's fully consistent with the way these things have been and are being done, and not just by me or my party, but by everyone in this chamber. And finally, with respect, Madam Mayor, I thought this was my right of reply, which is usually I'm the last person to speak. So it's up to you whether you bring Councillor Flynn in or not.
No, we need to now vote on the first. Sorry, Councillor Robertson, did you want to speak? I can't see. No, not at all.
In response to what Councillor Best said, the way that I see it, put aside what the amendments and what have you, to strike it out. What we're getting is, once again, that it's down the lines of everything that the independents of the Greens bring to this full council chamber. And they have a council trying to, oh, doing that behind the scenes, oh, already doing that, we've got that in place.
Can I just?
Can I say, it happens with everything. And they have a council are always doing it, the officers are doing it, no matter whether it's independent or free. So again, it's being kicked into the long grass of the Constitution Committee. We need to change the name of the Constitution Committee to the Long Grass Committee.
I think that is totally disrespectful, Councillor Robertson. Can you please sit down? You and some of your other colleagues from different political parties all have positions on these committees. So you and your colleagues are a party to any decisions that are made within those committees. So to just say, you know, kick it into the long grass and call the Constitution Committee the long grass, I find that totally disrespectful to your own colleagues, Councillor Robertson.
Can I speak, please?
Councillor Foster.
No.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's just an observation. I obviously put my name to the original motion, and I agree in principle. You know, we need more transparency within the chamber. I also agree with part of the amendment that Councillor Francis has made. And I don't dispute the amendment that's going to be put forward. And I don't dispute the impartiality in the work that the committees do. But I think I've made this observation before. There's certain motions I believe should be sorted out on the night within the chamber. It was an observation I made previously. And I think this motion would fit the bill. This is something I think could be resolved tonight with a vote on all the amendments that are put forward. And that way, it's been live screened tonight. People would see how we came to the decision. But if it does go to the Constitution Committee, I have no qualms with that. And I don't disrespect any committee that this council has. But they're just my observations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. And I'm totally confused now. We need to vote on the amendment to the original motion. So it's amendment 1 to the motion. Are colleagues in agreement to amendment 1 of the motion? No. Would you like? Right, we need 5 members to call a named vote. Right, can we do it by a show of hands then? Those in favour to the amendment, the first amendment to the motion, please show the hands. Those who do not agree with the amendment to the first motion, can you now show your hands? I can make the announcement that there was 12 members in favour of the amendment to motion 1 and there was 30 members against the amendment. So the amendment is not carried. We now move on to amendment 2 of the motion, which Councillor Bell did present. Does any member wish to speak? Sorry, is it seconded? Thank you, Councillor Best. Does any member wish to speak on the second amendment to the motion? Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would point out that Councillor Bell also didn't point out where things have been inserted or removed, but that would be ungentlemanly of me, so I won't do it. My issue with this amendment versus my own version, which obviously I prefer, is that it removes any timeline for this work to be done. And I think it's, having a time frame set out is essential for good strategic planning. And I also would like to point out that this amendment fails to include the call to lobby government for the changes that would make this both simple and inexpensive to achieve. That said, I know that this is a numbers game, and I'm outnumbered. So, in my opinion, done is better than perfect. So if this ensures that is taken seriously and looked at, I'm happy to support Amendment 2.
Thank you very much, Councillor Francis. Councillor Thompson, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Really, it's just about Councillor Bell's comment. And I think that's one of the main flaws here. I think we all respect the committees, even the Constitution Committee, but it without doubt strips away elements of openness, transparency and accountability. As Councillor Bell mentioned, then it would, to quote you, said, then it would be reported back to full council. But that's a report back when the decision's already been made, historically. I think this is a key flaw. If Constitution Committee gave its view and then it returned to full council for a vote, that would restore an element of openness, transparency and accountability. I think that should be something that should be referred to.
Can I just say to you, Councillor Thompson, only full council can change the Constitution. That is not changed by any committee.
Mm-hmm.
It has to come to full council.
Mm-hmm. But the form, for example, in the last instance, things were dropped in Constitution Committee.
But they had to come back to full council.
They weren't singled out and relayed in full council as they were presented, tabled as a motion.
Well, forgive me, Councillor Thompson.
If it should be in that, they were presented and tabled in full council, they should return to full council in a similar form with a recommendation from the Constitution Committee to be fully voted on.
And weren't you a member of that Constitution Committee, Councillor Thompson?
Pardon, Madam Mayor?
You were a member of the Constitution Committee?
I'm the one that usually votes for something which isn't passed through. So I'd like to see it considered that it's represented back to full council.
I think that remark, Councillor, with regards to you don't, what did you say about you don't vote?
I'm usually the one that's voting contrary to the rest of the committee. That's what I meant to say.
But don't the committee, because I sit on that by position as mayor, come to a consensus with the majority?
And you've just highlighted a flaw, Madam Mayor, and that stripping away accountability because it's a consensus as opposed to here where you can see exactly what everybody votes for.
I'm sorry, Councillor Robertson. Well, thereby hands it here.
I'll leave it there, Madam Mayor. I think that highlights a flaw.
Yes, but it does come back. It still falls to full council.
Not in its same form. It will come back as a report.
It always comes
around many things that were.
I'm sorry, Councillor Thompson, you're totally wrong, because the Constitution Committee always sends back a full report to council, because council.
I just said that, Madam Mayor.
But council made the decision.
I said it should come back in the format it went to Constitution Committee in. It should be represented, retabled as the motion with a recommendation from Constitution Committee. Each individual motion that was sent to Constitution Committee come back in a similar form.
So you want each motion, each item that is sent to Constitution Committee to come back to full council as individual
Yes.
items? But the report that comes back to full council, councillor,
It's, yes, one sentence.
I'm sorry,
That's exactly.
I'm not continuing
Okay.
this conversation, councillor.
Anybody can check the minutes from that last Constitution Committee meeting.
Anybody
I think it's
can
one- I
check
think
the
it's-
minutes,
I think it's
all of
one
the-
sentence, Madam Mayor.
Excuse me, councillor Thompson. As I explained to you, you sit on that committee. You don't get ignored, councillor Thompson, at all.
Point of information, Madam Mayor. Point of information. Councillor Thompson does not get ignored in that meeting, Councillor Thompson. I just couldn't quite grasp what you said. We always have a view within the Constitution Committee. So I'm sorry if I misheard. I'm just wanting to give clarification that when we had our public consultation, our public Constitution Committee, it was in the public domain. You had a lengthy debate with regard to the motions, and the press were in the public gallery. Unfortunately, there was no members of the public there, Madam Mayor.
I do recall that, councillor Dixon. Councillor Foster.
Madam Mayor, I confirm I'm sat next to Councillor Thompson. He did not use the word ignore. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I didn't refer to him as, oh, sorry. Right.
Apologies, Councillor.
It's very difficult sitting up here because you've got this. I can't see some of the councillors. So we do apologise. I'm sorry, I haven't got a clue where I am now. Does any other member wish to speak on Councillor Bell's amendment?
Yeah, if I could just
Respond,
please, if you
certainly,
don't
Councillor
mind.
Bell.
There's obviously been a lot of talk, and the reason there isn't a timeline on the amendment is that this is such an important issue that the Constitution Committee need time to do an awful lot of work around everything from the finance, as I said, through the location, through the legalities, and therefore don't want to be prescriptive and tell them that they have to have it all done by a certain time. And also, the Constitution Committee have been asked to report all their findings back to this council meeting, and that's what they do. They make recommendations and they come back here, and that's what we want them to do over this item so that the democracy wins above everything else, and that's what the amendment is for. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. We now need to take a vote on the second amendment to the motion. Shall we do it by a show of hands again? All those in favour in the second amendment to the motion that Councillor Bell has put to full council, could you please raise your hands? Thank you, colleagues. And all those against the motion that Councillor Bell has proposed? There are, thank you, councillors. Thank you. You can take your hands down. There are 6 members against and 36 in favour. So the motion is carried. Thank you. Agreed on the amendment to the motion. Now we need to agree on the motion itself. So can we do that again by a show of hands? So I'm sorry? No. So we need to vote on the motion with the amendment within it. Yes. So all those in favour of the motion with the amendment within it, please raise your hands. You're right. And all those against? We have, thank you, colleagues. We have 36 members in favour. We have 5 against and 1 abstention. Thank you, colleagues. We now move on to motion 2, which has been submitted by councillors Thompson, Brennan, Kennedy, Milburn and Forster. Councillor Thompson.
Second the first motion, we haven't had a chance to speak.
What we did ask, was there anybody else wanted to speak?
And that says I will be right to the end, and he's never come back. I'm sitting here waiting to that much stuff getting floated about. I'm still waiting for you to say, Councillor Roberts, would you like to speak on this motion?
But I'm sorry, we have moved on, councillor, but if you recall at the end of it, I said, did any other member wish to speak? And you didn't raise your hand. So thank you, councillor Robertson.
With all these motions going in, I didn't know what was coming about.
Join the club, councillor Roberts.
So I've seconded the motion, I can't speak on it. Is that what's happening now?
No.
Right, fair enough.
Thank you, councillor Thompson.
Thank
Is
you,
going to
Madam
present the second motion to full council.
Yeah, there's still a bit of confusion here, but yeah, encouraging words from Councillor Best, and she mentioned her words were relevant to this motion also. But I have to agree with Councillor Robertson. How many times has the opposition stood up in this chamber and then suddenly there's an awful lot of activity going on in the background? This is about to happen. No need to worry. We're about to work on this. Just had to comment on that. Moving on to my motion. So, other than the newly elected members here, yes, most of us have seen this motion in the chamber quite recently. The motion is to establish additional community area forums and selected committees to an evening schedule. And is proposed so that as a council, we can try to improve and develop public accessibility and participation in our local authorities' activities, accessibility to council committees and community area forums for both residents and members is crucial to openness, transparency and accountability. We need to ensure that both residents and members who are in full-time work are not facing an unnecessary obstacle to their involvement. From a total of 194 CAFs and committees, presently only 8 are on an evening. By establishing additional community area forums and selected committees to evenings, we as a council would be better positioned to consider how effective evening scheduling at this current time is. Currently, we have limited data to consider other than the knowledge that public engagement is poor across the board and improvement is required. Clearly, scheduling during normal working hours isn't working in relation to public engagement, with often not one member of the public being present. And certainly there are often challenges for elected members who work and are unable to attend in those normal working hours. By establishing a cross-party work group and reporting to council in the new year, we as a council, as said, would be better placed and better informed to decide on the introduction of selected forums and committees for 23-24. Finally, I'd like to preempt the usual suggestion from the Labour group that this is a matter referred to the Constitution Committee. It's been said many times before, and I'll say it again. Ultimately, motions should be tabled in the council and decisions should be made on them in the council chamber. Only when requested by the proposer or absolutely necessary should a motion be referred to another committee. On this occasion, I see no reason to defer. And again, to preempt the Labour group, can I ask them not to use the term politically balanced when they refer to the Constitution Committee? It misleads the public and gives the public the impression that members are equally represented politically. They aren't, and the term used should be politically proportional. For example, when this motion was last tabled and referred to the Constitution Committee, it was rejected in that committee by 7 Labour councillors against 1 independent councillor. Again, I will say, if we defer this to Constitution Committee, openness, transparency and accountability is significantly filtered out. Motions should be decided with the fullest visibility here in the council chamber. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You're welcome, Councillor Thompson. Does any member wish to second the motion? Councillor Brennan, would you like to speak now?
Yes, I'll speak now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to echo some of Councillor Thompson's points. I think it should be a priority of this council to make it easier for the public to attend community area forum and committee meetings. Holding these meetings at times when the majority of hardworking people can't attend through work obligations during the working day is being neither open nor is it acting in a transparent manner. This council should be making it easier and not harder for people to come and view the elected representatives in action. The Labour group have already voted down motions in the past to live stream and record meetings so the public can engage more. I think this is counterproductive in a democracy, and we should be doing our utmost as the elected representatives and officials to make this happen. Councillors, if you wish to practice what you preach about openness and transparency, you should be voting for this motion tonight. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Could I ask Councillor Thompson to switch his microphone off, please? Councillor Robertson, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As I said before, and what's been said dozens of times about kicked into long grass or Constitution Committee, why can the council, the full council, not just take a vote now? It's a simple, very fair request. Alternate all meetings, 5 p.m, 10 a.m. It's dead simple.
Just one moment. I'm just going to take some legal advice on that,
Thank you.
Councillor Robertson. I'll come straight back. Thank you for waiting, colleagues. Councillor Robertson, with regards to issues being taken to the Constitution Committee, it has a knock-on effect on committees as such, and only the council can make the decision, which is what I think I explained with the last motion. It has to come to full council, but it can have implications against our constitution, which we must all follow. That's the legal advice I've been given, Councillor. Certainly.
I have studied and read the Constitution, as many might guess, and it doesn't say anything specific. There's no rule about meeting times. We tonight could make and have a vote to have.
It's not, you're missing. I'm sorry, Councillor Robertson. I don't want to labour the point because there's still some more business to get through, but it would have a knock-on effect on other meetings. And that inadvertently would have an effect on our constitution. Councillor Bell, did you wish to speak? Sorry, Councillor Atkinson, I do beg your pardon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just like to take this opportunity to say, Councillor Thompson, I'm really uncomfortable, and so should you be, about alleging that Councillor Best, and I know she can speak for herself, somehow is you're alleging or you're intimating that Councillor Best, when she says that she's already started the process of becoming a champion for democracy, you're saying it's coincidental. What I'd say to you is that my understanding is Councillor Best came into this town hall on the 9th of June to discuss the role she's taken on from, a very busy schedule, may I say, of democracy. And she does that as a democracy professional. The motion that came in, I'm not sure of the date of that, but I'm sure her visit to us in the town hall to make suggestions, to get further advice, had nothing to do with the date of that motion coming in or any subsequent amendments, etc. And I think some respect from someone who is a ward colleague from both yourself and Councillor Brennan towards Councillor Best is in order. Thank you.
Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor,
Just one moment, please.
can I respond?
Just 1 second, please. Somebody else wants to speak. Could you turn your microphone off, please, Councillor Thompson? Councillor Stonehouse.
Hello. Just basically, I would like to, I'm looking around, you know, the audience here and our fellow members, and I would say that either quite a few of them are retired, like myself, and we have other members who aren't retired. They need to actually, they're very dedicated what they do here, but they also need to work to support their families. Now, you know, I do totally respect what you're saying, but at the same time, you have to give people the chance to express themselves and be councillors here. A lot of people are saying, you know, I would love to, but I work. Now, I think we need to be a little bit more flexible here. And I really need that would, you know, I think that would need to have more options for actual meetings. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Stonehouse. Councillor McGowan.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd like to speak in support of this motion because as a part-time working parent, I've already experienced firsthand the barriers that are mentioned in the motion to full engagement with my role as an elected member. So as it happens, I won't be able to attend my CAF next week. And so far requests to even discuss an amendment of the timing of being met with the non-negotiable shutdown. So I feel that the CAF is an integral part of the role of councillor and that it's not reasonable or fair on the residents of my ward for me not to be in regular attendance, especially where voting is required. But following discussions with my head teacher at work, it was decided that it equally wasn't fair on the 70 students who would miss their lessons on an all too regular basis if I'm not at work on CAF mornings. In 1911, the then Liberal Party introduced expenses for MPs because the makeup of the House was biased and unrepresentative, as only people with independent means were able to access the position. And this was clearly against the principles of democracy, so that I would hope that over 100 years later, we're able to not just uphold, but advance these principles in order to enable working people without independent means to take up the position of councillor and fully engage with it, and also to support those residents who would like to be more directly involved in their democratic processes to be so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGowan. Councillor Best.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to Councillor Atkinson for your supportive comments. They are appreciated. In terms of my situation personally, I'm a councillor. I work full time. I have been an officer of this council for 11 years who supported these meetings, daytime, nighttime. So I'm looking at it from a very rounded perspective, I'd like to think. But just really to sort of pick up on a couple of things, particularly that Councillor Thompson said. I was very worried by, sorry, I think it was Councillor Brennan rather, about hardworking people. People work hard when they're looking after their children during the day. People work hard when they're looking after elderly relatives or dependents, and people work hard who work night shifts. So I think it's a little bit of a sweeping statement to say that people only work hard if they work 9 till 5. And it does worry me that, as I said in the chamber, the last time this motion was brought forward, you may shift the problem if you don't look at it in the round, from excluding one group of people or perceiving to exclude one group of people to excluding a different group of people. So hence, that's why we already do have flexibility amongst the chairs of the CAFs to look at the individual circumstances of each CAF and, you know, to consult with the elected members in determining the best times for the meeting, because I think technically there is no best time for a meeting, is what I'm saying. But in terms of what I said earlier about that meeting on the 9th of June, it included all of these things. I don't think any of us would disagree that we can have lots of work potentially to be done to further improve engagement, inclusion in democracy. But what I'm asking is that we look at that in the round and to ask this meeting to make a snap decision when we haven't looked at the resource implications, we haven't considered the impact on people's working and terms and conditions. We need to do the work. It's been done before by this council. It took us to a very, very healthy position. If you look downstairs in the cabinet, we were seen as being at the forefront nationally and internationally of democratic engagement work. And we've got a great base to start from. And if anyone doesn't believe me, just walk down the stairs tonight and you'll see that trophy that we were awarded. So please bear with us. There's work that needs to be done to get us to that position of being informed and being able to make this decision. And it worries me intensely that we focus a lot on the CAFs, but we don't talk much about scrutiny. We have a cabinet and leader model here in South Tyneside. Scrutiny is about challenging. We're not challenging in that place very often, I feel. And also it has the potential to formulate policy. That's what it was designed to do. These discussions are the kinds of things we should be having in scrutiny and doing this spade work and then bringing it to the decision-making bodies. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Best. I've got quite a few hands up. So I'll take Councillor Bell first.
Chair, it's actually an amendment to the motion, so I don't know whether others want to speak first before we get to the amendment.
Yes, please. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm a firm believer if somebody speaks sense, regardless of who they represent, you should say it. And Councillor Best has just spoke a lot of common sense there and agree with what I said. I agree with the motion put forward by Councillor Thompson. And I think what we're all really trying to find in this chamber is a way forward. I fully accept my work in life. I work night shifts, back shift, and any shift that God decided to give us. And some people may be in that, being catched up in that. So really at the end of every CAF meeting, because CAF meetings are a pivotal part of what we do, it really is taking 2 minutes out. We've got an excellent chair now at CAF, and I'm sure at some point we'll just say, the next meeting, will it sort of be suitable for everybody to change it? I appreciate that we've got Councillor Atkinson and his deputy leader who have a lot of commitments. But maybe the councillors can just say at the end of every meeting, maybe it's the next meeting, can we move it and just compromise, which is one of my favourite words. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the 3 years on and off as a councillor myself, I've attended every full council meeting. I've attended every general CAF meeting, and I haven't attended any committee meetings that I've been on. I requested the monitoring officer at the start of my first tenure not to include us in the meetings because I couldn't get there. And the old chestnut keeps on getting said, by law, your employer's got to let you wait for council meetings. Well, that cannot work in reality when it's only a small company. When it's a big company, you know, that's fair enough. And even, you know, we get it, us independents get it on Facebook off the fake profiles and what have you. Why did you just become a councillor if you can't go to the meetings? Yeah. And it's a horrible dig to get. I know why I became a councillor. And I'm doing that and I enjoy doing that. But them meetings, I just cannot make it. Being a small company, you cannot get away. And it is putting people off standing for Labour, standing for the Greens, standing for the Independents, because they'll get slated publicly for not being at the meetings. Yeah, they'll feel as though they're not doing the job for not getting the meetings. If it's 10 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and I get what you said before, but it is keeping people out of this chamber from all sides. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I'm sure Councillor Best, as our democracy champion, will be taking that forward. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a point. We talk about balance, we talk about openness, transparency. There's been a lot of talk tonight about, you know, political balance and whether it's been fair or not. And I agree, it's democracy if the numbers don't weigh up. But I'd just like to point out, we're talking 194 CAF meetings. I repeat that for the benefit of those at home who are listening, 194 that are carried out through daytime hours and 8 that are carried out. That is certainly not balanced when it comes to people who work shifts, you know, and I get people work day shift, back shift, night shift even, but 194 through the day and 8 at the night on a night time. It's just, it needs to be more balanced. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Thompson.
just briefly, just to respond to Councillor Best's last words. She mentioned a snap decision. This is for 23-24. This is to put a cross-party group together to implement something nearly a year away. It's no snap decision. No. Am I speaking, Madam Mayor? Excuse me. And to Councillor Atkinson, I was drawing on a clear coincidence, which I think we've all seen what I was describing. Nothing specific about Councillor Best. I think the councillor protested too much. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Best, did you want to say something?
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, and I do apologise for interrupting. Yes, I think it's really important. What I was alluding to and speaking about was the conversation we had a little bit earlier about making decisions in this chamber tonight without doing the research work that was required. And that was what I was referring to. So apologies if that's been misunderstood, but that's definitely what I was saying.
Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I was wanting to propose an amendment to the motion. I'm happy to take your guidance on how you want me to present this. If you want me to highlight every deletion and insertion, I can do that. If you'd rather...
Has every councillor got a copy of the amendment to the motion in front of them?
Yeah.
Are councillors happy to take it as read, because you will have all have read the amendment, rather than having Councillor Francis having to stand and go through it all again? Is that okay, Councillor?
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I was hoping you would say. So, yeah, I will just highlight what some of the changes are, though. So I've amended the title slightly, and then I have sort of inserted some text and deleted some other text, but I'll come to the detail of that in a second. Again, I would hopefully, ask that we all start with an agreement that we all want local government to be accessible and inclusive, and that's for members of the public and elected councillors alike. So the change to the title is just to try and create a bit of clarity. The original text said establish additional community area forums, and I know what's meant by that, but it's not talking about an increase in number. It's just talking about a better balance between sort of the working day and out of hours meetings. We heard about the 194:8 ratio, which doesn't seem quite right to me. I've created a slightly tighter time frame than the original motion by calling for a date of March 2023 for this to come back to council. And the reason for that is because the annual meeting usually signs off the dates for the year. So you couldn't say you were going to do this and then sign off the dates for the year. You need time for that work to be done. And I think I've added in as well the importance of consultation with a range of people that might be impacted by this. So consultation including the public, consultation including elected members, and consultation including council staff that might be affected. I'm lucky because my job allows me to work flexibly and to work from home a lot of the time and to set my own schedule. But engagement in local democracy shouldn't just be for those with such freedom and privilege as the situation I happen to enjoy. So whether that's councillors or as members of our communities, it's worth saying that no one time is good for everyone. And that's why a range and a balance is sought, to try and do our best to make meetings accessible and inclusive to everyone. And as we've heard said, without inadvertently excluding one group by trying to include another. It's worth saying, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but I will because of things that have been said. In the CAF that I sit on, the will of one person overturned the chance for the committee to democratically agree a way forward with regard to timings, and that doesn't seem quite right to me either. So as before, the motion as amended is not committing us to actually definitely doing this. We've heard the issues with that, but it's asking that the background work is done so that we can all make an informed decision with the intention of making our work here as inclusive and accessible as we can. And I would just reiterate something else that was said. Rather than thinking, as Councillor Robertson said, that, oh, well, people should consider that before they stand as councillors, we should be considering the schedule of the meeting and bearing in mind working people, people with family commitments, people with caring commitments, we should be considering them when we set the date. So I think we need to get that the right way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. We now need to take a vote on the, oh, sorry, is the amendment seconded? Councillor Guy, thank you. Sorry, Bristow. Councillor Bristow has seconded the amendment. We need to take the vote on the first amendment, and we know then there's a second amendment coming in. Does anyone wish to speak on the proposed amendment, the first amendment? Councillor Thompson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say I see this as a constructive amendment and I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Does any other member wish to speak? No, so therefore we need to take a vote. Will we do it by a show of hands again? Those in favour of the proposed first amendment, can they raise their hands, please? Thank you, colleagues. Those against the first amendment, can you please raise your hands, please? I can announce that there is 12 members in favour and 30 against. We now move on to the second amendment. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously taking cognizance of everything that's been said, it's to replace the actual motion as it stands, because the council notes that accessibility to council committees and community area forums for both residents and members is crucial to openness, transparency and accountability. We need to maximise involvement of both residents and members to promote inclusion and democracy, whether that be at morning or evening meetings. This council resolves, therefore, to refer this motion to the Constitution Committee, which again is a cross-party committee, to fully investigate the financial implications, including but not limited to staff costs, location costs, and availability of those locations for evening meetings. Recent data shows that there were no discernible differences in evening or morning meetings currently held. However, the Constitution Committee should explore all available data relating to this council and other local authorities regarding this matter. The committee is to report back with all findings when these investigations are fully completed to council. The Constitution Committee is also to take into consideration the views of our democracy champion, who has been directly involved in work already progressing on this matter. Obviously, I know what's coming, and it is going back to the Constitution Committee. It's been referred there because that is the committee that can recommend any changes to the committee times of meetings. No other committee of this council can do that, so it's rightly going to the Constitution Committee. The timeline, again, is to allow full investigations to take place to see exactly what is of the benefit for both residents and members, because I do have data here from the last 3 community area forums, which, as members will know, are held both mornings and evenings. Over those 3 meetings, there was an average of 7.6 members of the public attended morning meetings. There was 84 members of the public attended. Evening meetings, there was 24 members attended, an average of 6 per meeting. So as members will see, there is no discernible difference, but we need the Constitution Committee to actually look into that and to bring their findings back to see exactly what we do as a council moving forward. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Is that motion seconded, the amendment that Councillor Bell has just read? Thank you, Councillor Best. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment to the motion that Councillor Bell has put to full council. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, you know, I may as well stand up at every meeting until shame makes something happen. It's gone to the long grass again. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Madam Mayor, just 2 points I'd like to bring out of what Councillor Bell's just said. The first one is costs, finance. Madam Mayor, I find it very, very strange that a Labour councillor can talk about finance when one Labour councillor spoke about the wind turbine that's going to cost residents £300,000, and they're talking about costs. Right, so that is just gone out the window altogether, Madam Mayor.
I'm sorry,
The second
Councillor.
point, Madam Mayor, the second point was when they're talking about the finance and stuff like that, I find it very, very strange that any Labour councillor can even think about discussing finance in such a short time like this. Yet we had the last leader rob the people blind and not one of them spoke out about finance. Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Is it? Is it? All right, but what was it?
Right, you were totally out of order, Councillor.
Well, that's what you think, Madam Mayor. I think different.
No, right, you're
we'll see what happens,
entitled.
Madam Mayor. A point of interest, Madam Mayor, can you explain to us when will this be sorted out?
I will not remind you again, Councillor. I've given all of the opposition members from all parties the opportunity to speak this evening on numerous occasions throughout the night. But I will not take disrespect to any member in this chamber or past member of this chamber. We sit here as councillors, all of us collectively, to represent the public. But disrespect is not on. I'm sorry.
I don't think that's disrespect, Madam. I mean, it's the truth.
I'm sorry. I don't wish to discuss it, Councillor. I think it's totally disrespectful to the members of the public.
Disrespectful members of the public. The public is getting robbed.
Excuse me, Councillor. I won't warn you again. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to really reiterate what I said before, regardless how this gets resolved. I think it's something that we should just use a little bit of compromise. And I think with the CAF that I'm involved with, certainly with Councillor Amar, I think it's something that hopefully our CAF will discuss amongst ourselves. And if there's a way forward, moving forward, having alternate meetings at a time. And I personally think it's very important, as the councillor said here, about having the members there, because it's always best to hear it firsthand, taking into account the availability for the public. So really, I think it's something, though we've had a heated debate about, it's something which I think compromise will win the day. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Kennedy.
Yeah, just like to point out that I think that the data used to collate the information over 3 meetings where somebody stood up and counted the number of members of the public is limited, and it needs to be put out to a broader forum. How many members of the public didn't turn up because they were either at work, had childcare issues, or whatever else? You know, you've probably got people who've given up on these things because there is a limited availability to go and see them. And I go back to the point that 194 meetings that are conducted at times in a day, and we've looked at 3 meetings out of those 194 that, granted, one of them was in the morning, one was possibly in the afternoon, and one was on the evening. It's limited data and it needs to be put out to a wider platform.
I think your points will be noted, Councillor Kennedy. Thank you. Councillor Leask.
If my voice goes, please excuse me, I can't help it. What I have found in the 18 years I've sat on this council is that people will find a way to get to the CAF when it's something that really, really bothers them locally. We have had as many as 100 people. Ours is a nighttime CAF, but lately we've only had 1 or 2 people sitting there. People choose what they want to do for what suits them. They're in their lives, what is best for them. And I just find it strange that we're arguing like this over when the CAFs are going to be, because everybody cannot be available at one time. You can only do your best by what you think your CAF needs.
Thank you, Councillor Lees, for those remarks. Councillor Francis.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, just to echo what Councillor Lees said, I think I'd made some allusion to that. There's no one time that's good for everyone. It's trying to get a balance, really. But the things that I would pick up on in this amendment, I'm going to say that I think it's positive to say that you would look at data relating to other local authorities. I think that's an excellent thing to do, and would help inform the decision that's made going forward. But as we've heard already, I would query the data just being from a 3-month period, and because what you've described doesn't compare like with like. So you've looked at some CAFs that happen in an evening and the attendance for that particular CAF happening in an evening, and others that happen during the day, as compared with if you took, for example, Riverside CAF and you took the data from a Riverside CAF meeting held during the day and then compared that with a Riverside CAF meeting held at a different time, you would get a better representation of what was good for the people and the elected members covered by that particular CAF. Again, there's no time frame here, and as I said before, I think that's essential to have for the kind of good planning and, you know, keeping things moving forward. I know it says in there that the democracy champion's views would be taken into consideration, but as I said earlier on, I think it's important to take into account the views of all the people affected, whether that's members of the public, elected members, council staff, and I think all of those people need to have a voice in a proper consultation on this. And I think having that as a process that was built into it would have been more positive, in my opinion. That said, again, as I said before, done's better than perfect and all that. So if this ensures that it is looked at properly and that a report comes back to full council, I'm happy to go with that. But I would echo Councillor Forster's point that regardless of what full council decides, I think each committee, and in particular the CAFs, should have the autonomy to set their own times as best suits the members of that CAF, and the members of that CAF should be given the opportunity to vote on what times are most suitable for them and best meet their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Francis. We will now take a vote on Amendment 2 to the motion that was presented by Councillor Bell. All those in favour in the amendment to the motion that was presented by Councillor Bell, could you please raise your hands? Thank you, colleagues. All those against the motion that was, the amendment 2 that was raised by Councillor Bell, could you now raise your hands? Is there any abstentions to the vote? Thank you. I can announce that there were 34 members in favour, 6 against, and there was 2 abstentions. Thank you, colleagues. We now move on to motion 3. Do we need to vote on the motion? I'm sorry, colleagues. I'm totally confused. Please forgive me. We now need to vote on the motion with the amendment that was proposed by Councillor Bell. Please do forgive me. All those in favour, would you raise your hands? All those against, could you raise your hands? And do we have any abstentions? Thank you very much, colleagues. We had 35 members in favour, 6 against, and we had 1 abstention. So the motion is carried. Thank you. Now we can move on to motion 3. Motion 3 has been submitted by councillors Robertson, Kennedy, Milburn, Roberts and Foster. Councillor Robertson, please present the motion to full council.
Madam Mayor, sorry, excuse me, Councillor Robertson. Just before we start, can I just make a point just to say to my colleagues that there is a process for blue plaques, and I will be playing part of that process. So on this vote, Madam Mayor, I will need to abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon.
Yes, I too would like to, will be abstaining. I play a small part in the awards process.
Thank you for alerting the council to that. Councillor Atkinson and Councillor Dixon. Councillor Robertson, would you like to present the motion to full council?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as you can see, the motion is relating to St. Clair's, so there's not going to be any digs at Labour councillors or what the Labour council has or hasn't done. So we made an application for the blue plaque to be put on St. Clair's building, adjacent to St. Clair's building, or as a last resort on the bungalows next door on the wall. As Councillor Dixon just said, the council makes 3 decisions a year, and it's a long drawn out process. And I know they don't give them out like lucky bags. I understand that, the blue plaques. But again, what I've said numerous times tonight and been said numerous times in this full council, there is a process to be followed, and I understand whether it's a constitution committee, whether it's a blue plaque process. But on this occasion, what's going on with St. Clair's, we're now 4 years down the road. This council could take a vote tonight. They really could. They could take a vote, but they won't. So down the lines of this motion is to ask for all members to support the application for the blue plaque. And as you'll see, the Labour councillors have put an amendment in, and I fully agree with the amendment. I really do, unusually for me. And it's for a memorial garden at St. Clair's, a beautiful idea. Yeah, so I'm happy to go with their motion or my motion because they're not touching the blue plaque. So together, let's feel the love and vote for St. Clair's and get this blue plaque and memorial garden. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councillor Kilgour, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'd like to move an amendment when colleagues have had the chance to debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kilgour. Is the motion seconded that Councillor Robertson has just? Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Did you wish to speak? No problem. Does any other member wish to speak? No. So we move on to the amendment to the motion. Councillor Kilgour.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I think, all of us around this chamber and in the gallery and beyond watching from home would agree with the spirit of the motion. I don't think anyone would take that away. I'll read the motion in its entirety, or rather the amendment. I think it's clearer to do it that way. So I would like on behalf of council, that the heading is St. Clair's Hospice blue plaque and commemorations involving the community, which I think is really important, Madam Mayor. So following the long-awaited launch of the Cedar unit at Haven Court last month, it's timely that we now enter into discussions with the landowners, who are South Tyneside and Sunderland NHS Foundation Trust, where our former St. Clair's building stands empty, in order to commemorate the very evident communal value it has. We must also remember the origins of St. Clair's and include those in our discussions. An application to South Tyneside Council for a commemorative plaque, known as the Blue Plaque, to be installed adjacent to St. Clair's hospice buildings has been made. The formal commemorative plaque scheme raises up to 3 plaques per year. We would like an assurance that the request made on the 11th of June is to be fully considered as the process sets out, given that we believe that the criterion has not only been met, but exceeded. We would like that the council resolves to make contact with the Foundation Trust following initial support requests from members directly to its chief executive to hold discussions around involving our community, establishing permanent memorials to the former St. Clair's Hospice and its origins. This would include a blue plaque scheme and a garden of remembrance. And Madam Mayor, if I could just add a little bit of context around that. From the very outset, certainly Jarrow Constituency Labour Party did discuss a remembrance, the ability to have some form of permanent remembrance. And it isn't just for our loved ones who have passed away, it's for their families and for anyone who has cared for our loved ones as well. So it is very much something that we'd like the community to get involved in. And it is something, it's no coincidence that this has happened at this time. But I have taken it to the Chief Executive of the Trust, and he finds it timely that those discussions begin, given now the launch of the Cedar unit at Haven Court. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Kilgour. Councillor Robertson, do you want to respond to the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On the back of that, what's just been said, you know, it is really nice, although it's 4 years down the road, it is really nice to see this chamber do what I asked them to do 3 years ago, come together, relating to St. Clair's. So brilliant what's happening, contacting the Foundation Trust, etc. At this moment in time, we've got an application into the council to have St. Clair's building and land registered as a community asset. Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor, that's not for discussion. What we're discussing here is the blue plaque.
Yeah,
so
I
if we
understand
just,
that, but
if we
I'm
just
saying about where we're going with it, the blue plaque, then the community asset transfer is into the council as we speak, and the decision comes within 8 weeks. And ultimately we'll apply for a community asset transfer, because the NHS, the Foundation Trust, need to get the message they're not going to demolish St. Clair's building. It's not happening, and we need to all let them know that. Thank you, Lady Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robertson. Councillor Francis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So yeah, what a surprising and positive way to close the meeting tonight. I know sometimes in this chamber we agree to disagree. Sometimes we disagree to disagree as well. But you know, I think this is a good example. The last line of the amended text, this would include the blue plaque, and the Garden of Remembrance. You know, there's no need for compromise there. It's a proper win-win, and I think that should be applauded. So fully support the amendment.
You've already replied to the debate, Councillor Robertson. I'm pleased about that, Councillor Robertson. Good. Councillor Atkinson, you wish to speak?
It's just really for information. I'm sure Councillor Robertson will know this, that nominations are invited virtually throughout the year, and around about September are closed for a kind of matrix scoring to be applied to all of the applications. The people, there are about 3 or 4 officers involved with that scoring. Things such as historic interest, in the case of a person, someone who's made a considerable, contribution to any part of the borough, etc., etc. Now, obviously, 3 plaques are awarded a year, and very often it well exceeds that number. The scores on the doors come through, and that's when the recommendations come through to who award to. So we're not making, I just wanted to point out, we're not making the decision that St. Clair's gets a blue plaque, because it has to go in that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Axton. I think every member sitting in this chamber appreciates your input, and we're well aware of that. Do we have a seconder to the amendment that Councillor Kilgour? Thank you, Councillor Robertson. That's good cross-party working. Is the amendment to the motion agreed? Is everybody in agreement? Apart from the 2 abstentions that I have from the leader and the deputy leader. Can everybody show the hands if you're in agreement? It's easier. We certainly do. Thank you, colleagues. Is the motion agreed? Yes. Colleagues, that concludes this evening's meeting. Can I thank you all for attending, And just to remind you about the summer parade on Saturday, I thank all of the members of the public in the public gallery and all those members of the public watching from home. Thank you very much. Stiff drink.